Scott just made
Go
the
back to
point
Thomas
Jefferson
Jefferson, you'll
used to
read
be a
that-
lot more secure, not just... Well, it looks like the EU is facing another huge test as a political entity because Greece, as we shoot this episode, appears to be in default on their repayment schedule. What's worse, from a German point of view anyway, is that the Greeks show no inclination to enact the austerity measures needed to at least appear to want to comply. Now, this isn't the first time, but it may be the last time. We just don't know enough right now. But good news. Not knowing anything about a subject has never stopped your Trifecta team before. So let's bring in Scott Ott and Steve Green to speculate on the future of both the EU and the USA. Gentlemen, as I said, the situation's very fluid, but this is it in a nutshell. The EU is composed of a rich tapestry of different cultures and social norms. One of these social norms is that Germans work hard, and another one is that Greeks don't. So, hard-working Germans are, and have been for quite some time, been paying for Greek spending sprees only to see the Greeks essentially stand on the shores of the beautiful Aegean in their little black Speedos and flip the lederhosen-wearing Germans the bird. Now, the question is, Steve Green, how much bird flipping do you think you could take from a sunbathing Greek in a black Speedo? Speaking for myself, I would describe my threshold as low.
Oh, to quote the late, great Phil Hartman, Speedo freedom, or as I like to call it, Speedum. Look, you know, I miss that, man. I miss news radio. You know what the problem is, Bill? You know what the problem is with the inevitable? It always seems to happen. It was almost 25 years ago now. Margaret Thatcher wrote, it was 1993, so 22 years ago, in her first memoir, I can't remember the name of it, and a big tip of the hat to my friend Will Collier for pointing this out, to a Business Insider story from 2013 covering Margaret Thatcher's book from 1993, in which she said the problem with the European Monetary Unit, the EMU as they called it before they settled on euro with a lowercase e, the problem is the industrious countries are going to get sick of bailing out the non-industrious countries who can't restore their competitiveness by inflating their currency because they're all smushed together in this one currency. She said countries like Greece are going to require bailouts because they can't do what they've always done, which is they get in trouble and they inflate away their debts. No, they're stuck with these euro-denominated debts, and they are stuck with them. That's why Greece is in default, because they can't inflate, and they can't inflate because the German-controlled European Central Bank says, no, 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 we are Germans. We are against inflation because of that little situation in Weimar that you might happen to remember from the 1920s. So she predicted this in 1993. You know, she wrote it probably in 92. She'd been saying it to the House of Commons in the 1980s when the European project really started to pick up steam. The problem with Margaret Thatcher is she's reviled on the left because she was almost always right.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan once walked the earth together is almost like thinking about, you know, like Apollo and Diana walking through a garden someplace, just a mythological thing that some people used to believe is almost incredible. Now, Scotty, the EU...
That was my political coming of age.
You betcha, baby. Scott, the EU, unlike the USA, is not a real nation. Mostly, as I've said before, it's because they've never had to go to war together. So the next question is, do you think that we could see something like that here? In other words, hard-working oil men in Texas finally saying, hey, we're working hard and we're making money here, and you patchouli-oiled California man-child crybabies are bringing this federal government down by us having to bail out your debt all the time.
Well, actually, we have seen something like this here, but you have to go back a little bit in history to find that. And let me just speak up on behalf of the Greeks. The reason why Greece is the Speedo-wearing, you know, lazy entity that it is because all the good Greeks came to America. And they are working their butts off here. They are the hardest working people I know, and I love them. I used to go to this Greek food festival every year, and there's just some of the finest people known to man. But Greece has become like the brother-in-law who's been sleeping on your couch for way too long, and then you say, hey, Chet, you need to move on now. I mean, you really need to go get your own place.
Yeah.
And Chet goes, yeah, I know. I've been meaning to talk to you about that, and I agree with you, and here are the terms of my departure from your couch. And then he starts dictating that you'll have to give him a car, and you'll have to help him move, and you'll have to find a place for him to live, and you'll have to pay the deposit on the place for him to live. And so that's the situation we're in now. In Greece, they elected, this virtual communist leader, and now they're basically saying, hey, let's have a referendum to tell the EU to stick it. And we're just going to leave that, if they won't renegotiate the terms of our debt, then we're just not going to pay it. This country has a constitution, by and large. The United States of America has a constitution because there were 13 individual entities who basically decided when and if they were going to pay back debts, and whether they were going to issue paper money that was worthless, and whether they were going to inflate their currencies and stuff like that. And the whole thing was just essentially falling apart because of places like what they affectionately referred to as Rogue Island, and other states that would just basically say, you know what, we owe a lot of money, so we're just going to pay you with this here. We're just going to give you some of this here, and you just help yourself to as much of this you want. This is worth $100 a sheet. And thus, we had a constitutional convention in 1787. Perhaps I simplify a bit.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The situation currently unfolding in the EU is Germany coming into the living room and looking down and going, hello, Chet. That's where things stand at the moment. Look, needless to say, the glue that holds the USA together is a lot stronger than that which holds the EU together. By and large, there are Greeks and Germans, and they have different languages and different attitudes. Now, you could argue that the residents of San Francisco and Biloxi, Mississippi have different attitudes and languages too, but there's a lot more mixing here. For example, all Americans like air conditioning. That's the cultural glue that holds the union together during the summer, at least. I can say this, though. The days of Americans working their tails off to pay for people who don't and getting not gratitude but rather contempt in return for their efforts is starting to run a little thin here. So we need to watch what the EU does very closely, because the big government entitlement leviathan that might very well destroy that union is being aggressively fed and nurtured right here in this one. For PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle.